what I'd like to hop over to is something that we kind of started with, and that is the learning design conversation. And I know that this has a number of tendrils, and it's near and dear to my heart as a classroom teacher and as an instructional coach, and as someone who has done all the jobs and been at the helm at teaching and learning, and all those things, right? All the jobs that we've all had. um, and yet this comes down to, I'm about to dump the Lego out on the floor, and I'm going to ask people to build something with some new blocks, and I'm gonna need to help them to learn what those new blocks are and how they act, how to connect them together. I'm going to have a plan for that. I'm going to have a PD plan that is relevant and to our current situation, and also doable, right? Because we have to think of accessing learning differently, not only for our kids but for our adults. And so there's actually a some data here, right? We're talking about 20% of administrators cite wanting to move to a blended or flipped traditional model with a defined asynchronous learning within the normal grade class course structure as they move away from purely traditional, right? That's a stair step. And then we've got an equal number wanting to move to the hybrid HyFlex model, right? Of using both traditional grade class course structure and sort of a time, sort of the asynchronous, more flexible type of a structure with the hybrid logistics that Leilani was talking about, and some of those other pathway types of things. And so on this particular slide is also the graphic that you've probably seen a couple of times if you've been connected to Learning Council, and it really accurately does a fantastic job of describing and identifying learning objects and the complexity or sophistication of those. And if you've been connected, you've heard me and others talk about this and the importance of this. The reason that this is actually on this slide is because you have to be operating within a scale of complexity and sophistication within your objects. Otherwise, your learning design is going to be impacted, and that's going to impact then teacher time. And if the whole thing is about maximizing humans and allowing machines to do some of the things that we don't really need to do, then understanding what those Lego blocks are on this scale becomes really, really important. Actually, it's actually very important that we know what a digital document is and why that's the sort of the lowest level knuckle dragging level of a digital curriculum object or a learning object, and then how a courseware object can help create personalized pathways and allows you to address things like time, pace, and place in creation of an experience. And so this is, if I was going to place importance on stuff, being able to define your learning design model is absolutely critical, and is a huge lift. If you don't have instructional coaches in your system or somebody who acts that way, yikes! Wow. Teacher leaders who are willing to step forth and take risks and try stuff and apply practice and help others to infect others, right? This becomes a zombie apocalypse, right? And so you essentially want to infect other people with positive practice and change. And so let's talk about that. Where do you see the learning design in terms of this larger shift? What's showing up out there for you? What are you seeing around learning design movement? Are we still in the heads in the sand? Let's go back to whatever we thought normal was for 150 years and beat kids over the head with stuff, or are we actually seeing some movement out there with teaching and learning?
So this is Leilani going to put my video on because for some reason it shows the picture of Doug instead of me. We have, some people that are on the line that haven't spoken up at all. So I'm calling on you guys, like Colleen and, Tony again, and maybe Edward, and you guys, speak up. But, when I look at this, we created this, I don't know how many years ago, Chris, it was like 8 years ago.
Yep.
And then of course the Edu Jedi started filling in that designer mix of characteristics, like all the things that goes on in software now. And I think the real thing here is that there's not enough people in administration that have actually been in the software of some of this really glorious stuff, right? They don't even know what you're talking about. Their frame of reference is not there. Like they're not out there playing Minecraft like all the kids. They don't understand software and what it can do. And I think that's job one. I really do. I think I don't care who you are as administrator or leader at any level. You got to get in some software. You got to experience it yourself because you don't know what you're talking about. It's a different world. And we entered that world when we entered the pandemic. And we don't really fully know it yet administratively, how much software is going to change the game. It is majestic. And it is now an expectation because we had bad online learning for a while. Hey, Edward, we saw you flash on and off. Let's have you talk. Hi, Edward.
Hi. I just, I've been a proponent of this for a long time, but I'm a new superintendent here in Washington State this year. And so I'm kind of starting over again with my staff and everyone here, but still see this as the direction that we need to go. I've initiated a strategic planning process as a stimulus for, moving us in this direction. But we're a very small school district, just 240 students in a K-12 school district. So I think really this is an ideal process for small school districts like mine because of the diversity of students at different levels and limited staffing options and everything. So I just that's why I'm here, is to share in this thinking and learn as much as I can to make sure I'm doing the right things in my job.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining. Yeah, you're an ideal scene because you're almost a one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah, just about. I actually have a one-room schoolhouse with the 8 students on one of the other islands out here.
Yeah, so I grew up in that kind of area in northern Minnesota.
Yep.
And when we first started, Chris and I had these Edu Jedi conversations, about where things were going and understanding software that we were thinking about people like you, right? And actually, some of the superintendents at the time when we were talking about this said, we get any shorter on teachers, we're going to have to dub the 11th and 12th graders to circle back and teach the younger kids because we don't have a choice. We don't have the kids, right? Like they couldn't get, and that's what happened in the one-room schoolhouse stuff, 200 years ago. You had master teachers. There's pictures of this on the internet, like one teacher, 1,000 kids in New York, and they would meet with the older students in the morning, and all the older students would apprentice and run the younger kids. And you almost, the great gift of that was everyone graduated with an appreciation for everybody of every other age. They were good parents. We're missing some of that social emotional interaction between ages. We have been for 200 years. And it's had an effect. So I think you're in a really good position. You could really, truly make a difference, right? Like in terms of structural change. I think you're going to have fun, Edward.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So you brought up that we as administrators don't know what's out there, which I completely agree. So how do we immerse ourselves in that? Because I'm not going to go play Minecraft. Sorry, it's just not going to happen for me at this point. I've watched kids do it, but yeah. So I guess my thinking goes to how do we have a content that administrators need? So a professional development content, but done in this kind of a way. So this digital software that would allow us to double track. So we get the content we need, right? There are so many of those contents out there, but we also then can deconstruct, okay, what happened in my learning process? What was that software that pushed me in that learning framework?
Yeah, and I think that's been the work of the EduJet and the conversations we were having all last summer and 22 different meetings we had with people. So it starts with that, download that special report that we have in here, or else go to our site and get it. Because once you read through those definitions, your matrix in your mind allows you to evaluate software because now you understand what it is that you're looking at. So for example, linearity is a concept of the way we've always taught. We do one thing and then we do the next thing, we do the next thing. Well, software doesn't have to do that because it can launch you this way, that way, over here, blah, blah, blah. It can create alternative pathways that are very different, and it actually formulates your mind a little differently. And kids are coming in, they're on these things all day and they're clicking here and they're clicking there and they're going over there. So there's so that construct alone is you're experiencing what it's like to actually be a software builder because you know the non-linearity of the world. So I would say that you don't have to experience all of it. You have to understand what it's supposed to be doing. And then the second piece of advice I would give you is, and I'm begging companies to do this all day long, right? Like as learning counselor, when we go seek sponsors, I'm telling people like, come to our meetings, like they should be on this one today. Some of them should have been demoing to you. We ask them, we're going to give you 5 minutes or 10 minutes demo. And they go, no, we want to talk about the birth of the company and the fact that we've been in it for 250 years and we're super smarty pants and blah, 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 blah. I love them, right? They're so cute. But demo, people need to see what it does when you poke the button. And then where does it go? And then what happens? And what does my teacher have to do? And where's my dashboard? And how do I see it, right? You need demos. So the Hybrid Logistics Project, by the way, is going to allow companies, just like a for a teacher set up with students, they're going to allow you to shop in that marketplace. So you're going to you guys are all, I'm asking you right now, push your companies to get into KnowStory because they'll be able to set up a little button that says request demo and it'll auto calendar to your calendar. And you can set it for 10 minutes so it doesn't take up your whole day. And then all they're supposed to do is get on there and show you screenshots, like live demo in the site. Here's how it works. Then this happens. Then this happens. This is what the student does. Because honestly, most of these companies are piled high with academicians. And they want to talk about the efficacy and exactly how it aligns with standards and la, 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 la. And really, actually, what you need to be concerned about is the user experience and the interface. Because if you don't get engagement, you're not competing with the outside world. It's not about what's inside that stupid Google Doc. I'm just about to say, because that's so 10 years ago, document-wise. If it's not sort of almost gamified with levels and blah, 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 and little awards and things like that and badges, it's not going to meet these kids where they are. So that's the issue right now, right? Like get them to demo. Don't just talk about your great company and your coverage model and blah, 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 blah. Show me. Get online right now, a demo account. I want to see it. And that's on you guys. You have to start making all these companies actually do that. And they don't. They're, go ahead.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think another aspect, Ellen, to sort of address how do we get our administrators to understand some of this stuff. Actually, the administrator's job is gigantic, right? All of our jobs are big. They just are. And so to actually make the learning relevant to the person's place, right? But also help them to see why this is important and what it feels like in order to be able to manage a learning shift. A building administrator has to watch that happen. They have to be in the classroom and they have to actually, right, we've all done it. Those of us who have been building administrators, if you're not in the classroom, you're not in the right place. You're a leader of learning. And so actually taking people out, modeling the pathway through whatever platform you use. If you're causing teachers and students to use Canvas, then the administrator should be using Canvas as well, because they need to know what it feels like to be in that ecosystem and in that process, and run the executive learning through whatever platform you happen to be using for kids, and then do the same thing for teachers. And actually, I've walked along with executive leadership in a couple of other districts, and as a teaching and learning guy, this was always a strategy for me. I would grab somebody who was directly connected to the implementation of something, and if they didn't know what it looked like in the classroom, let's go. I'm going to grab you by the arm. We're taking time. We're going to walk some classrooms, and we're going to start to see. And all of a sudden, questions come up, and light bulbs turn on, and then there's a rich discussion. Then there's a rich conversation about, oh, okay, got it. Now I see why a Google Doc is different than courseware, and here's what it looked like to me, and then here's how I know I can help that process to move forward and give feedback appropriately, and start to measure change within my building. And so that's, it's a big deal, but you got to grab your superintendent should be doing the same thing. If your superintendent has caused you to have digital learning objects in the schools, get out there and see them. Go watch it happen. Watch it happening.
But I would also argue that inside courseware, like we had a teacher come to our live San Diego event a couple of years ago when we were in San Diego, and she said someone made her use, I think it was Dreambox, it might have been Edmentum or Mind Research with the little Gigi, the penguin.
Oh, ST Math.
Yeah, ST Math.
Yeah.
Made her use it. They're like, here, some administrator, she said, came running by and gave everybody their logins. Like, you can use this if you want, kind of a thing. That was their attitude. So she was like, well, I'm just going to let the kids who are so advanced, they're going to get in there and I'm going to let them play it as a game. If they do their other stuff, their worksheets more quickly. So that's what she said. She did that. And pretty soon she had to actually log into it because she had to grade what those kids were doing, right? Like, because they would come into her and going, you're supposed to grade me. Don't you know that? And she's like, oh, okay. So I was to log in. And she liked it so much that after just a few weeks, she slid it into core for all the kids and got them all in there, and then realized that her job had just changed. She didn't have to do all the distribution of the knowledge because the distribution was happening in a gaming structure. She was just flanking the gaming structure, helping kids who were stuck. Like they kept being in like one loop of the game. They couldn't pass it. And then she'd have to back them up and sit them down and fix them. But the other kids were like, oh, this is great. I mean, I just got 10 more stars and I did this, blah, blah, blah. And look at Gigi, I'm going to show you. It's like awesome, right? I've played that game myself, the Gigi math, because they came out to, weren't they in Portland with us one year? I think they were.
Yep.
And they made us play, and I got stuck. I couldn't actually get through something. So I had to like ask a teacher to come over and help me. And I was like, am I stupid in math? Oh my gosh. But that struggle, that exactly what a teacher wants. That struggle moment happened to me doing the software. And so I got this new appreciation for the quality of the user interface and user experience in that, and what the teacher has to do and how precise the teaching moment is, because the teacher that came over to help me said, let's look at it again. What do you think? Right. And then made me walk through the logic of what I was doing with that math problem. Right. It was a very interesting teaching moment for me, but the software was teaching me the content. The teacher was causing me to make me struggle with and do it. Right. It was a very interesting thing. But you don't understand what's happening until you've experienced it yourself. And not all softwares are the same. There's many companies telling us right now they're losing accounts because districts are telling them that nobody was using their stuff. And the reason they weren't using their stuff, it was too hard or whatever. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that helps you a little bit, Ellen, because, I'm sure these companies are trying to pitch you. And they're telling you everything but what you need to know, which is show me. All of you guys in leadership position need to be in a show me mode. Show me, right? Don't just tell, show me. Like that's really, yeah. I'd like to ask Steve's opinion of that because, being on the side that you're on, I don't know what you're seeing with these software companies, but I'd like you to pipe up about that. If you're there, Steve, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been our experience as well. When we're working through kind of looking at disruptive tech or tech to bring in, it's very much now, I think we've matured working with TNL to do it so it's not done in isolation, and then two, it's when we're moving away from kind of this is a really cool shiny thing to let's be a little bit more sophisticated about how we vet, and part of that is we've got to understand both the technology and the pedagogical impacts, and so that for me drives that working together. And I've seen us make progress is in that is becoming, we're looking for those opportunities to drive together.
Yeah, and it's almost like I would like to say this because this is going to be a little, this is an odd statement to make, but for all you guys in administration and IT, right? When you're talking about what software to use, or even thinking about looking at courseware, especially not just repositories of digital discrete objects, but courseware, you're actually looking at hiring a teacher. The software is going to do the distribution, the rendering of the content, the calculation of student pace. Some of the grading probably is pre-assessing for what module to put the student in. It's going to do formative assessments along the way. It's going to do summative assessments, it's going to issue dashboards to teachers, and it's going to invite teacher participation along the way at every glitch of moment. You're hiring someone. It's a machine. It's automating a function that used to be entirely and only the teachers. And that's where teachers get freaked out. But let me just go further than that. It's allowing you to move your teachers into very precise personalization that they've never even dreamed of being able to do before. You're hiring a thing to do a job, and allows you to take your human resources and use them very eloquently. It's not replacing them. It's using them at a professional level they've never been used before. So in that way, what you've just hired for them is an assistant teacher. And if you start looking at software that way, you win. Because that's really what it's doing, the good stuff. I mean, the clunky stuff, no, that's not doing that, right? It's just a piece, or it's a tool. So many years now, I've been hearing people say, well, technology is just a tool. No, I'm sorry, not anymore. It's not just a tool. It's actually doing something that has been only the purview of the teacher for 200 years, which is the distribution of the piece of knowledge, the collection of it, the testing of it, the seeing if you get it, routing you back and forth. We're in a different age. And so you really got to start thinking in a different way. And I hope I didn't offend anybody by saying it that way. Any comments? Chris, I'm going to hand it back to you. Let Dan
No, sorry. I was actually looking at a comment, some commentary from Tony Campbell. So Tony, if you're on, I was looking at the data. I was looking at the data picture of a student's learning profile that you were bringing up, and sort of in the context of all of these things that we're discussing today, and moving systems forward, and how do we bring people along, and how do we set the vision and the pace and all of those things. The data management of that, that can be big, right? I mean, and we've all tried to use dashboards and things like that. And so can you expand on that a little bit, Tony?
Just every product has a different dashboard. Every product shows its own subset of the data, but it doesn't really let us look at the data in a global way. I mean, they're powerful, but often a product is language arts specific or math specific, or we've got things in the learning management system. We have our state assessment data, and all of these are in different data warehouses. And so it's really difficult to look at a science student, for example, and say, is their problem reading? Is there a problem math, or is there a problem in understanding of the science content? And because that data is in separate places, and we have a lot of students, we have a lot of skill sets in the core. Each system right now, they're not cases rolling out with IMS Global, which is great, but every system uses different standards identifiers. So there's no way to even look at the same two standards in two different systems and align that data yet. So there's a lot of work there. For the data that we have to be manageable and beneficial and usable, Our providers need to look at how to get data out into a common data warehouse more at this point than they need to look at how to make their own cool little data warehouse in their individual product.
I would agree, Tony. And we've been pushing this for a long time. This is a conversation that's been rolling around the business for a long time. And as an educator, I remember sitting in data meetings, right? And so data meetings, yes, the purpose is that the function is good, right? The outcome is you look at all the information and you might be data rich and information poor, but you're supposed to be getting to that information rich part. And as a young teacher, and then as an administrator, and moving into this world, yikes, you're right, it's bananas. And so to have something that sits over the top and says, okay, here's a scatter plot of my kid as they're moving through space on their path, that's for sure the nirvana of a learner-based system. Because then as an administrative staff, as a classroom teacher, as a team of teachers, I can take a look at that and say, okay, yeah, here's where I see intersections needed. I think Lonnie talked about UNOs, right? And so those are all intersective points. And so if you happen to have that, then you're moving along the path and the learner is moving along the path, and you're able to watch that and then place one of those intersective moments in, whether it's a group or whether it's an intervention point, or it's a classroom discussion, or it's a small group or a large group or whatever, right? It can be any of those things. But that's for sure. And I'm heartened by some of the standards that are coming up, that are coming out of the industry. But for us to think for a moment that proprietary systems can remain proprietary, that's not good, right? And I get it. I get that you want to have your own brand of things, but if we don't come together to help resolve that common dashboard issue, we're piling on work. And a lot of that analysis, a lot of that pre-analysis can be done by a machine, right? The machine knows how long does it take for me to browse or scroll on Instagram before all of a sudden Instagram knows me and starts to send me stuff. It takes about 30 seconds. And so of course humans are predictable, even though everybody is relatively unique. Over the sea of humans, we're all kind of the same, and we're all relatively predictable. And so couldn't we allow a machine to start doing that? Take information from Dreambox, take it from SD Math, take it from whatever, Discovery Ed, and mush that stuff together, put it together in layers so that I can see it like this, because that's what we used to do in the analog days. And we would take all of our formative and summative assessments, and we'd take our results from a comprehensive assessment system. We'd put them up on a wall. It was called a data meeting, and we sat there and we looked at all of them and made some decisions and did the things that humans need to do. But we could have shortcutted that, right? And I think that's, Tony, what you're getting at. We could shortcut that and go straight to the decision making, and let the machines do the thing that the machines are really good at, because the machine does it way faster than we could. And you're right, absolutely, for sure. Has anybody found a solution for that? Anyone? Steve, maybe you guys have a solution. You're out on the edge. Maybe you found some fixes for that.
No, I think you've articulated the dilemma.
Great. Yeah, it's definitely something to talk with our friends in the resource provider world about, because and I think we've all experienced an LMS trying to do that, trying to smurge information from disparate sources. And gosh, I mean, I give everyone props for trying and for engaging. But if there's somebody really smart and capable out there listening in, could we just have that? Could you just make one of those for us? Because we'd love it. And the teachers would love you too, for sure. So yeah, so that's interesting. One of the questions that comes up for me in terms of this learning, sort of learning design, and you see different systems treating it differently. And it's sort of like who creates the pathway, and how much of this is done at the central office level, and how much of this is done at the building level, how much is done at the classroom level. And sometimes I hear from building administrators, you know what, just tell me what to do. Give me the core standards, and I'll hand those to the teachers and say, here you go, this is it. Priority standards. Yeah, I don't need to take my teachers through that. That's some time that they don't have, that I think is important to them beyond what this is. So just give me the priority standards, and I'll just make it so. And what I cringe at is that the process of identifying priority standards is not about the end, it's about the journey, right? The nectar's in the journey. And so what about that? I mean, if we're creating pathways and we're creating common units or assessments or all of those things, who's doing that, and who's setting the pace for those? And is, are you, as a system, are you in a place where you're like, yeah, actually we've got this great solution, and we're doing some of it, and the teachers are doing this, and the buildings are moving in this way. What's going on out there in the world with that, in terms of that learning design and the pathways, and who's doing it, right? Is it CNI? Is it your curriculum instruction team? Is it instructional coaches? Is it ed tech? Is it a combo? Edward, I'm going to call on you if you're still on the line. When you stepped into your new world, do you have structures in place that you think might help in that regard?
I think one of the problems I have is that there weren't any structures in place. The school district, the systems were not there. I'm the first full-time superintendent that they've had. The prior superintendent was both the superintendent and elementary school principal. So the focus on systemic issues and district-wide issues really wasn't there. So I'm having to look at all of that. And most of this year has just been about observing the way things operate and anticipating changes that we need to make moving forward.
Which is kind of nice, right? Because you get a sort of a blank slate. You get to invent it as you see fit. That's fantastic.
Still have to motivate change, though. Still have to bring people along and consider that personal side of it for everybody, and make sure we can try and get as many people on board as possible. Get our key people to buy into what we want to do, and hopefully lead the rest of the staff along the same path.
Right. Yeah, providing an example. Sometimes you see systems that create like innovation centers. I was talking actually to one of the districts in Colorado, St. Vrain, and they've got some structures in place that are similar to that, where they've taken some of the new processes and placed them into spots, right? And so they've got some innovation centers that are pushing forward with practice change and with implementation of tools, and are providing an example for folks who might be, right? There's the island that we're getting to, and you're on one island. There's the people that are going to just jump in the water because they know they got to get there, and they're going to swim, and yep, there's sharks, but they're going for it. And then there's the other people that are sort of shark watchers, and they're going, gosh, I don't know, there's sharks in here. Is it really safe? And then eventually they start to go. And then there's the flagpole holders that are staunchly not getting off the island, even though they know they have to, or they'll starve. They're like, nope, there's sharks in the water. There's no way I'm not going. And so those innovation centers do a great job. And I've seen those done in classroom sort of contexts, and where structures of sort of learning rounds or observational rounds, or you could choose any of those constructs for observation, and they provide examples of what we're talking about at varying levels, so that people can see, oh, that's what you're talking about. When we see this graphic and we talk about this thing, that's what it looks like. And that makes things so much easier. And for those of us like myself that are visual learners, I really want to see it. I want to see it, and I want to be able to manipulate it. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for me.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from staff when we talk about change. Is there some place we can go to see this in action? There are places that we could go, but the reality is we need to create some of those places within our own buildings to let people see them.
Yeah, and there are. I mean, you're in Washington. Where are you in Washington?
Lopez Island,
Okay,
the San Juan Islands.
right. Well, there's a lot of water between you and the mainland.
Yeah.
And so there might be sharks. There's orcas in there. But there are examples. I mean, there's some places that are doing some of the things and have been for 10 years or more. And it's awesome because you can take a small group of people, and I've seen districts do this where they'll spend a little bit of money. They'll take people to a spot and they'll go watch, and they'll go through a series, it's like an observation, right? It's like a learning walk in those places and glean things. And it isn't that you're going to replicate what they're doing, but what you're doing is learning about what you might be doing and placing that into your own context.
And that's one of the things that I've seen that I find a little bit problematic, is that there's not an ideal model to follow. I mean, you go to different places and you see people doing, working towards the same goal, but doing it in such different ways that it's hard to identify a consistent path towards that goal.
Mm-hmm. Right. And if I could add to that, what you seldom see is an observation tool, right? And so it's almost like when you're creating common data points across a system, right? Whether that's a building or a school system, and your administrators are supposed to be looking for evidence-based practices in a range, without having the pre-brief and the debrief associated with that walkthrough. There's no way that you're going to calibrate across the system, and that's where you start to see problems, because then there's disparity, and one view of one thing might be they're rocking it, they've knocked it out of the park. Another person might see the exact same thing and go, yeah, no, that really wasn't it. That was not it. And so having a rubric, having a pre-brief and a debrief, treat it as a learning walk. That's the sort of stuff. Tony Campbell just popped on and said that they just came back from a high reliability school summit, and that they have a solid process. What's the process, Tony?
They've really aligned the process to the professional learning at work kind of things, professional learning communities at work, excuse me. But with that, they start with those basics of your PLC, which are your culture first. Then they work with your effective teaching. Then they look at guaranteed and viable curriculum. Then they move into standards referenced reporting. And from there, they move into the personalized and competency-based education kinds of pieces. But they look at how to harness technology throughout that process to be able to get to those points where we're really looking at the learner, reporting on the learner, meeting the needs of the learner. It was really a lot of good information for us. We came back with some things that, in particular for us, where we're at, that will be valuable to us. So.
Yeah, so they probably have a bunch of tools that you can use along that within that structure, right? So they've got a model, and then they've got observation tools, probably some rubrics, some sort of measuring, like a single point rubric sort of stuff.
Indicators and rubrics and questionnaires and all of the things for the process. Yeah. Right,
and that's all stuff that you could either make up, or you could do it on your own, or you could glean from those folks. And I'm always a proponent of flattery, and will gladly grab stuff that somebody else is doing and give it a try. It doesn't mean that you use it straight out of the box, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There's a lot of great stuff going on out there. So Tony, if I could expand on that. So what did you come back with, and that you think you're going to be able to implement, or how did it modify your team's thinking?
As a team, there were two things in particular that we came back with. And it may seem silly, but just with where we're at, but we really looked at our model of instruction, and we realized that we need to get some more consistency and clarity in that, so that we get the outcomes that we have are more comparable and more measurable. The other thing that we looked at dealt with the standards, and I've got to think of the term. Sorry you caught me off guard just a bit with the question.
Sorry.
Let me pull it open. Proficiency scales. It just came back. Looking at common proficiency scales so that we have a common way to be able to measure the instructor's impact on the student learning. And then for me, as the director of learning technologies, I came back with the realization that the standards reference reporting and the personalization competency-based pieces really fall strongly into that digital arena, that they're that next step for the schools that we're targeting and working with. They're the transformation idea, if you will, behind things.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. That's so you took a sort of a multi-functioning team. You took teaching and learning, and then you took yourself as sort of digital ed tech.
Yeah, we had both. We had administration, we had professional learning, and we had our instructional technology people together to have those kinds of conversations, and just the opportunity to be together away from everything else for a bit, and to talk about teaching and learning and what we can bring to the table, and what we have in our goals that are common to that within our strategic plan was a really good opportunity.
And that's super rare, right? I mean, if I think about systems that aspire to that, they're like, oh gosh, I wish my chief academic officer had time for me, or I wish we had a relationship, or I wish we weren't at loggerheads all the time. That's something to celebrate in your system, because it doesn't happen all the time. And it's critical, right? You have to be tech learnologists. You can't just be one or the other anymore. You've got to know the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anybody else having that sort of, sorry, Tony, I cut you off.
I just said exactly. That was all.
Okay. Anybody else having similar types of epiphanic moments where you're teaching and learning and ed tech folks and technology folks are coming together to have a common thought and experience? Success stories?
Less curricular, but one thing we've been doing is we're in a 10-week private student data privacy course with our TNL and IT teams. And that has very much helped our work with regards to kind of standardizing applications, and also learning how to properly vet applications from both a teaching and learning perspective and privacy perspective. So it's not as connected to maybe what we were just talking about, but I think that was a opportunity just for them to be together once a week, talking about a subject for them, for understanding to move between departments. And we've actually built some capacity in both departments around kind of learning a little bit more deeply what others are engaged in.
I had mentioned earlier, we use Learn Platform for that within Washington County School District. We've developed a fairly good process with that for our applications, with rubrics and with content coordinators involved in the process, and our data people and our digital people all working together, where our teachers can request the different products. But we also have used the tool to ensure that it's not only about the compliance. We've given who supports the tool as information, and the training contact, and where they can go to look to see if the tool is down or is having a problem and the company knows, where they can go for additional support, how we use the tool, links to our instructional playbook for our instructional model that say, okay, this particular application is good for helping you teach these kinds of things with these kinds of practices, so that it's more of a, I want to go here to find out more, and less about I'm going here to be compliant.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. So folks, I'm running out of time, and this is what I'm passionate about, and I would love to just continue to pick your brains and be able to share all of the information that you all have with everybody who's listening and engaging with us today. Big thanks to everybody for being here and for doing the work that you're doing, and for not losing sight of where we're all going, because we all have to get there. And yes, we're in hard times, but this is one of those yes ands. this is, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's a pain point, and we still have to move forward. We just do. And so relying on each other as resources, this is what it's about. It's what we do. And one thing that I love about these convenings is that this is where we get to do that. This is where we sit in a room with folks, either virtually or in person, and we get to move forward and come away with some good learning. So Dan Johnson asks if we're sending the slide deck. Yes, you'll have access to the slide deck. Thanks for everyone to everyone for being here and participating virtually. If you can get to the in-person meetings are fantastic. One thing that I really enjoy about this kind of a session is that we get to build off of each other's thinking, and that's hugely valuable for me. And I always learn. I learn every time. So that's a thanks and a selfishly, I'm taking away probably as much as I could possibly fill my brain with right now. And that's good. That's fun for me. So.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Dr. Prakanti Ellen back here in a second, and she has a presentation to show us, and then we'll ask her some questions, and then we're going to move into talking about hybrid logistics. We have a guest also, Mary Schlegelmilk, who's going to join us for that from Cisco. And then we'll have our panel discussion at the end. What I wanted to just recap on is, for right now, is really what we've been talking about, which is, all of the things that you guys just went over. And essentially one of the key points is the time and space shift, really what's going on as a pressure point. So Chris, you and I can tell some stories about what we've been hearing in Salt Lake City and Phoenix for this crowd to hear from. Essentially, in Salt Lake City, what we saw at each of the tables, because we got to be live there, which we didn't get to be with you guys today physically together, but was the type of conversations I've never seen before. It was very, very robust. The level of attendees, we didn't have a lot of people, like you don't get a lot of people anymore at any live events. But the title level, we had board members in the room, a ton of superintendents, assistant superintendents, chief academic officers, chief information officers from a lot of districts, some of the biggest ones in the area like Davis. And one of the things that was shared was really that the pressure inside is almost equaled by the pressure outside. That's what Davis Unified said. And that the board arguments and all of the parents piling on and everything that's happening outside was really a significant pressure point for them. And then we heard the other districts say the same thing. And we heard an echo of that in Phoenix. Yeah. Yeah. So for this moment, if you haven't had your lunch yet, you should definitely be heating that up, slip away, and do that and make sure you have your lunch all ready to go, so that you can be eating while, if you haven't done that or taken a break at all. So we should do that. Anything else you want to say, Chris, about what we saw?
Yeah, totally. And I can connect to that, to the pressure points, and then to a conversation that we just had in the little discussion roundtable. And so that is the necessity. And this is something that we also heard, right? We heard this at Buckeye. The team that attended there from Buckeye acknowledged that there are pressures, acknowledged that there is pressure on the superintendency like there has never been, right? There's pressure on teaching and learning. There's pressure on tech. There's pressure on teachers. And yet what I picked up, and it wasn't just from the Buckeye folks, but from the other districts that were represented, what I picked up was yes, this is happening, and yet we're going to move forward. We're going to keep going. And I, big respect, because to be able to stand in a room and articulate that and say, yeah, actually we are going to keep going. And yes, it's hard, but that's something that I heard and took it to heart. And that's the hope that we share, because yeah, it's daunting when you've got folks showing up at your board meetings with guns. That's scary. And to be able to say, yes, actually, we are still moving forward. We're going to move forward. It's because of the learners. We're going to put the adult things in context, and we're going to continue to move forward. So that was one of my big takeaways.
Yeah, definitely. There's just it was a little bit emotional,
For sure.
one
For sure.
superintendent. Wasn't it Chris Knutson?
Yep.
In Phoenix, he said he had a parent come in and want to fight him.
Yes.
You have to stop shit.
Yeah. It's good. It's
Cut-
awesome.
cut-
It's
kind
like
of
it's like a new deal out there. Yikes.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.